Hi students, welcome to session 4 of soil. In today's interesting session we are going to learn about the composition of soil. In the previous session we discussed about formation of soil and we also discussed about the soil profile. So in today's session we will learn about composition of soil. So let us start with today's interesting session. Yes, composition of soil. Students, soils are a mixture of different things like rocks, minerals and dead decaying plants and animals. So soil can be very different from one location to another. But generally it consists of organic and inorganic materials, water and air. These are very important materials which are present in soil. Students, the inorganic materials are the rocks that have been broken down into smaller pieces. So the size of the pieces vary. It may appear as pebbles, gravel, or as small as particles of sand or clay. So remember that soils are a mixture of different things. So there is not only one thing which is present in soil, but there are many things which are present in soil. So the main constituents of soil are sand, clay, silt, pebbles and humus. And in the diagram which I am going to discuss with you, it gives the particle size. It will show the particle size of some of the constituents. In that diagram we will discuss about the composition of soil and we will also discuss about the particle size of constituents. So the difference in the proportion of these constituents, these main constituents, leads to the formation of different kinds of soils. So let us see what is soil composed of. Yes students, here you can see a glass jar. Now students, we know that soil is composed of distinct layers. So if we perform this activity, then we can come to know that how these layers are arranged and what it is composed of. So students, if we take a little soil and if we break the clumps with our hand to powder it, then what will happen? Obviously it will break down into smaller pieces. Now we can collect these clumps and we can fill or we can put it in the glass jar like this, and we can fill it up with 3/4 of water, and after that add a handful of soil which we had already broken down into clumps. Then stir it well with a stick to dissolve the soil. And after that we let it stand undisturbed for some time. So afterwards, when we observe this glass jar, and we can see the layers of soil. We can see the layers of particles of different sizes in the glass jar, and we can see that there are some dead rotting leaves or animal remains floating on water. So the rotting dead matter in the soil is called humus. And we also know that the soil is formed by breaking down of rocks by the action of wind, water and climate. As we discussed in the previous sessions, that this process is called weathering, the disintegration or breaking down of rocks by the action of such factors, natural factors. So the nature of any soil depends upon the rocks from which it has been formed and the type of vegetation that grows in it. So accordingly, we can see some layers of soil. So let us see the layers of soil. Here we can see a beautiful glass jar. And after performing a very small activity, we can observe some layers. So here, the first layer which is formed here is the organic matter, also called as humus. Then comes water, below that is the layer of clay, below that is fine sand, below this layer is thick sand, and the last layer is gravel plus pebbles or small stones. Right? So these are the layers of soil, or the composition, not the layers but the main constituents of soil. We can see some layers. It has been divided into layers when we add a handful of soil to 3/4 of water when we fill it in the glass jar. And if we allow it to stand undisturbed for some time, we can see these layers clearly. So this is the organic matter, which is also called humus. After that comes the water, then clay, fine sand, thick sand, and last but not the least, gravel plus pebbles. Now, let us discuss about the particle size of constituents, from which we can know the diameter of each particle. Yes, students, particle size of constituents. Now here, the first particle is the clay. Clay has a diameter of less than 0.002 mm. After that comes the silt. Silt is also the particle or the constituent of soil, which has diameter of around 0.002 to 0.05 mm. After that comes the sand, which has the particle size of 0.05 to 2 mm. After that comes the fine pebbles, which have the particle size of 2 to 5 mm. After that comes the medium pebbles, which have obviously particle size of more than fine pebbles. So it will be 5.002 to 20 mm. And lastly, there are coarse pebbles, which have particle size of 20 to 75 mm. So these are the particle size of constituents of soil. First is the clay, which has less than 0.02 millimeter or mm. Then comes silt, 0.02 to 0.05 mm. Sand has a size of 0.05 to 2 mm. Fine pebbles are 2 to 5 mm. Medium pebbles are 5 to 20 mm. And coarse pebbles are 20 to 75 mm. Now, if you remember these constituents in a sequence in this manner, then you will be able to remember all these particle sizes, because they also go linearly. Less than 0.002, then 0.002 to 0.005, 0.05 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 20, 20 to 75 mm. So this is the composition of soil. So students, as we discussed that the organic material is the decaying living matter, and this could be plants or animals that have died and decay until they become part of the soil. And the amount of water in the soil is closely linked with the climate and other characteristics of the region. So the amount of water in the soil is one thing that can affect the amount of air. So very wet soil, like we would find in a wetland, probably has very little air. So remember that the composition of the soil affects the plants and therefore the animals that can live there. And accordingly, these layers are formed, which forms the soil profile. Right? So that was all about the composition of soil. Now, let us discuss about another interesting topic of soil, which is a very important topic to discuss and to study, and it is properties of soil. So now, let us discuss about the properties of soil. Students, soil has spatial properties which determine the type of soil, and these properties are absorption of water in soil, moisture in the soil, and percolation rate of water in the soil. So now let us discuss about all these properties of soil in detail. The first property is absorption of water in soil. Now students, the plants that grow on land grow in the soil, and they require water in the soil to help them grow, right? So if the soil can hold water, the plants will grow well, because if the soil cannot hold water, obviously the plants will do not get water, and because of that the growth of the plants will hinder. That is why the plants will not grow well if the soil cannot hold water, and that is why this is one of the very important property of soil. If the soil does not hold water, the plants would need frequent watering or they would die. So the plants that grow on land grow in the soil, and they require water in the soil to help them grow. Because here the amount of water a particular type of soil can absorb is its water absorption tendency. Means the amount of water plays a very important role, because a particular type of soil, because there are many different types of soil. So every soil type does not have the same amount of water or does not have the same absorption capacity. So a particular type of soil can absorb the amount of water, and this is called its water absorption tendency. What do we call it as? Water absorption tendency, because this means that the tendency of a particular type of soil to absorb specific amount of water, and each soil type has different water tendency or water absorption tendency. So higher the absorption of water by soil, higher is its availability to plants and higher is the growth rate of plants and the well development of plants. The other factor, the other property of soil is moisture in the soil. Now here, soil has some amount of water present inside it as in the form of moisture. I would like to tell you something, that when we take a little bit of soil and when we heat it in a test tube, we can see that there are tiny droplets of water condensing near the mouth of the test tube. So where did this water come from? It is the amount of water which is present inside the soil in the form of moisture. Always remember that there is some amount of water always present in the soil in the form of moisture. And we can estimate the moisture content by the look and feel or texture of it. So we can estimate the moisture content of the soil by its texture and its feel, its look. So soil moisture is also a very important property which helps to determine when it needs to be irrigated and how much water it needs. Because every crop or every plant does not need the same amount of water. And that is why soil moisture is one such important property which helps to determine that how much water a plant needs. Accordingly, it needs to be irrigated. Means if there is any plant which needs more water, then obviously it needs to be irrigated. And there are some plants which do not need so much of water. So it needs not to be irrigated. The third property of soil, the important property, is that of the percolation rate of water in the soil. Now, first of all, let us get familiar with this new term, percolation rate. Now here, the rate at which water exits the soil is known as its percolation rate. Water exits the soil, means whatever amount of water is required by the plant will be absorbed by it, but rest of the water will exit the soil. So this is percolation rate. So different soils, different types of soils have different percolation rate of water. So for proper plant growth, it is important to check the percolation rate of water in soil. Because in a well-drained soil, water will pass rapidly after it is irrigated. On the other hand, soil with a poor percolation rate will hold too much of water for too long time. Not long a time, it's only too long time, which can be harmful to plants. So if there is much water available for the plant which is not required by the plant, then it can become harmful to plants. And therefore, this percolation rate of water in the soil plays a very important role. It is a very important property. Now, I would like to discuss one more thing other than these factors, that what happens to water when it falls on cemented ground. If the ground is cemented, then what will happen to water? Yes, cemented ground is porous to some extent, but the porosity of a cemented floor is very low as compared to soil, and therefore water absorption is very slow in this case. In this case means in the case of cemented ground. So most of the water that falls on the cemented floor evaporates or runs off, and only a very small amount seeps into it or seeps through it. So cemented ceilings have to be specially treated to make them waterproof, otherwise waterlogging would result in seepage. So this happens to water when it falls on the cemented ground. This was only one thing I wanted to share, right? So we are through with the composition of soil and the properties of soil. What are the three properties of soil which we discussed? Yes, the absorption of water in the soil, moisture in the soil, and percolation rate of water in the soil. So that was all about the properties of soil. I hope you liked today's session. We will meet in the next session with a new topic of soil. Till then, keep learning and have a nice time.